So I'm one of the few, the proud, that got a PS5. This includes the Newfangled Controller, which is like the HD rumble tech of the Joy-Cons turned up to 11, and also includes Gyro Motion Control, just like the PS4, allowing you to control the game by moving the physical controller. These two features together have the potential to be a game changer for this console, but emphasis on the word potential. Truth be told, I don't think Sony will actually capitalize on this technology, but they could, if they only do one thing. Hi, I'm Don Lasagna, and this is the one feature that could take the PlayStation 5 controller from a cool next-gen title to a genuine game changer for the console gaming scene. Before we start on that, let's take a look at the PlayStation 4 and the history of motion control. The PlayStation 4 didn't have the fancy smancy rumble tech of the PS5, but it did have the Gyro Aim, and it's surprisingly accurate. This could be used for fine aiming in many shooters. The Switch has this too, and I speak for a lot of Switch owners when I say that I could not imagine playing some of its games without it. Sony introducing this on their controller is a big deal. One of the biggest limitations of controllers are the analog sticks. They just aren't very precise. You will never get the same level of precision out of analog sticks that you can with, say, a keyboard and mouse. The Wii tried to bridge this gap with the motion-controlled Wiimote and Nunchuck, something that was so intuitive that it brought in an entirely new demographic of gamers. The Wiimote allowed for something much closer to PC accuracy while keeping the comfort and satisfying rumble of a console controller. Later, the PlayStation 3 would rip this off with the Move controllers, but the Wii U would be the first of the modern age to offer gyro as a middle ground between the standard controller and the Wiimote. Whereas the Wiimote was a replacement of the right analog stick, gyro was designed to supplement them. PS4 and Switch offered gyro soon after. So with all these companies throwing their weight around multiple generations to make motion control a thing, why is it not a thing? I mean, I forgive you for not even knowing that the PS4 had motion control, because aside from some niche exclusives, the technology isn't really being used. Heck, even in those exclusives, the functionality is stupidly limited. The most infamous example of this for me is, well, Infamous. This is a game where you spend a lot of your time aiming and shooting, but the only time you can use the gyro to aim is a graffiti minigame. Like, the gyro aim is there, someone took the time to develop that, and it's in the game, but I can't use it with this aim, only that aim. At least it bothered using it. The Killzone series used the Move controllers for Killzone 3 on the PlayStation 3, but not the built-in gyro on the PlayStation 4 controller for Killzone 4. The game that required the niche, expensive peripheral had motion control, but the game whose audience all had free access to motion control through the base PS4 controller didn't have them. Ratchet & Clank didn't use gyro at all, despite being more of a shooter than this series has ever been, and despite the PS3 using the 6-axis controls. Uncharted 4 didn't use gyro aim. Actually, Uncharted is particularly sad since the PS Vita Uncharted game, Golden Abyss, had gyro aim, meaning on a technical level, Uncharted 4 was a downgrade in some ways from a PS Vita game. The PS Vita's gyro wasn't even as good as the PS4's, but it was better than the PS4's analog sticks. It's just kind of sad. This technology is right there, and the first-party titles on the system aren't using it. Meanwhile, the multi-platform games aren't using them in any capacity at all. And that I can understand. Third parties aren't going to spend extra money on features that will likely only appeal to a niche crowd on only one of these several platforms they're developing for, most of which are already going to buy the game anyway. That just doesn't make good business sense. But why not the first-party titles? Nintendo has always implemented their controller's features in most of their first-party offerings, but not Sony. The Last of Us Part 2, a game with more options than any console game I can think of, only just recently implemented motion controls, and it works pretty well. But it seems like Sony's approach to motion controls is just to include them and hope the developers spend time and money on it. But it hasn't worked before, it doesn't work now, and it won't work in the future, because spending additional resources on it simply is not feasible for anyone but the heaviest hitters in this industry. Sony's hands-off approach to the features on their controller is simply not going to work in the modern age where most things are multi-platform. Devs are not going to prioritize your console just because you have some extra bells and whistles. There's no point financially. So how can this change? Well, to figure that out, we need to look at the other big name in motion controls, Steam. Steam threw their hat in the gyro ring a little later than others. They released their Steam controller in 2015, which came with gyro controls. It is, in my opinion, one of the best controllers I've ever used. It's definitely not perfect, but it's really comfortable, and it has gyro aim. But I don't like the Steam controller just for the gyro aim alone. I like it because of how it was supported. Enter Steam Big Picture Mode. Initially designed more for the failed Steam console than anything else, it also served as a hub for your Steam controller. Here you could customize every aspect of the controller, and these customizations could work in any game in your Steam library. You could remap every button, including the 2 extra grip or paddle buttons on the back. You could map the buttons to correspond to different gamepad buttons or keyboard and mouse buttons, and could make any button act as a turbo button. You could also go even deeper. You could map how sensitive the touchpads were, and the amount of haptic feedback they gave you, how much rumble certain actions gave you. You could have multiple button layouts that can be swapped to with the press of a button. I genuinely haven't even scratched the surface of the amount of features in Big Picture Mode, but we have to move on to the best feature. You could save control mappings and upload them for others in the community to use. You could mark them as general profiles or make them specific to a particular game. You could download other people's profiles and use them in your games, and then you could modify them for your own personal use. So what does this have to do with gyro aim? Well, for one, the Steam controller had gyro, and Big Picture Mode let you customize it. But more relevant to our discussion, it was not something that Valve really pushed. In fact, Valve didn't really expect people to use gyro as much as they did. They just expected it to be a niche feature, but it ended up being a defining feature of the device. And I think the reason is because it, along with the other customization options, didn't rely on a developer to build it into the game. Big Picture and the Steam controller was its own ecosystem that would simulate a controller or a keyboard and mouse, making it automatically compatible with any game. It was also community driven. A developer doesn't have the time or money to make a specific gyro control scheme for their game when they have to ship a product before deadline, but a passionate fan with some time on their hands can craft the perfect control scheme in and upload it for the entire community. You'd be surprised how many games have a Big Picture controller profile made for it, even games without official controller support. Heck, even games without official controller support not on Steam, with a bit of finagling, can be made to work with a Steam controller. I say this both to show you how awesome a system like this can be, but also to show you what Sony can do to make their controller actually matter. In 2016, Steam added support for the PlayStation 4 controller in Big Picture Mode. This means that the best demonstration of the PlayStation 4 controller's technical abilities is on PC. The PS4 controller has more advanced capabilities on PC than it does on its home console. I can use Sony's Gyro Aim with Sony controllers on PC, but not on Sony's console. I have used the Gyro Aim in the PS4 controller more in Microsoft platform exclusives than the PlayStation 4. And Steam recently added support for the PlayStation 5, where I imagine that, aside from Astro's Playground, the same thing can be said. This is ridiculous, and it should change. Sony needs their equivalent of Big Picture Mode for the PlayStation 5. The fact that Sony has spent all of this money adding all of these features to their controller, but they don't have their own equivalent to Steam Big Picture Mode, is baffling to me. Honestly, I don't even see the point in adding gyro to the thing if they don't do this. It's this dinosaur tier logic that simply doesn't fly in the modern age. If you want people to use your stuff, you have to make it accessible. Sony has had 5 years to change this, and they haven't. If you're a console gamer or a PC gamer that hasn't delved into Steam Big Picture Mode, I can't really explain how cool it is to be able to use custom profiles made by other players for your controller on Steam. A bunch of really smart people without deadlines or financial concerns can think of solutions faster than a stretched thin dev team. Why is Sony leaving that resource untapped? If I were in charge of Sony's PlayStation division, I'd have made setting up the software with these features a priority. This not only would be something that came with the console, it'd have been a selling point of the console. This would have been advertised at every E3, press conference, everywhere before it was released. Anytime I shut off the controller, I would show off the software customization that you could do to it, to the point that the general public would see them as a package deal. Like Big Picture, you can enable Gyro Aim on the controller and customize it to simulate the right analog stick, along with all the other customization options Big Picture comes with, like buttons and everything else. You could save your profile and upload it online for others to use, just like Big Picture mode, and we could even allow players to control the other big feature of the PlayStation 5 controller, the rumble. You could create your own rumble profiles to activate depending on what buttons you press or how hard you pull the trigger. It wouldn't be on the level of Astro's Playground where rumble changes depending on what surfaces you walk over, but it would be better than the basic rumble the controller came with. And for games that don't come with PlayStation 5 official HD rumble support, players could pick up the slack. Now you have controller features that will live on regardless of how many developers officially support it. Heck, developers could even program in special features into the official PlayStation software for their own games, and maybe those features could be used in other games as well. It's a lot easier to add to somebody else's existing ecosystem than it is to create one from scratch, provided the ecosystem is designed well. And seeing as the software will only have to work with one controller on one device, I'd say there's a good chance that implementing this well would be easier than Steam Big Picture mode. Later on down the road, you could add support for the PS Move controller if you decide to make that a thing again, and people would be more willing to buy the peripheral if they don't have to rely purely on the developer good intentions to use it. So yeah, that's my soapbox. If Sony wants this controller's new features to be worth anything in 2 years, they need to follow Valve's lead and make it easy for us to use. They need to put the power in the hands of the community that have unlimited free time to do the things that developers can't. And I really, really hope Sony does this. I love motion controls, and even if you don't, them being an option wouldn't really hurt you. I want to see motion controls thrive again, and I think with Microsoft asking their fan base if they want motion controls in their controllers, the Switch having them, Steam having them, and Sony having the potential to use them, we are primed for a motion control renaissance. Sony just needs to take it seriously. Thanks for watching.